The Eastern Front, 1943, the brutal, unforgiving crucible of World War II. It was a place where life was cheap and survival was a daily miracle. In this sky of death, a legend was being born, a phantom pilot who would redefine the meaning of aerial combat. His name was Erich Hartmann. To the Soviets, he was known by a simple, terrifying moniker, Der Schwarze Teufel, the Black Devil. He was a man who flew 1,404 combat missions. He engaged the enemy 825 times, and he shot down 352 enemy aircraft, a record that stands today and will almost certainly never be broken. To put that into perspective, the top American ace, Richard Bong, had 40 kills. Hartmann had nearly 9 times that total. Yet, despite facing constant combat, despite being targeted by entire squadrons, Hartmann was never shot down by an enemy pilot. He was a force of nature. This is the untold story of the boy they called Booby, the little one, who became the deadliest fighter ace in history. A man who mastered the art of survival in the most lethal environment imaginable. This is the history of Erich Hartmann. Erich Alfred Hartmann was not born into a military dynasty. He was born in 1922 in a peaceful German town, but his real home was the sky. His mother, Elisabeth Hartmann, was one of Germany's first female glider pilots. When she returned from China, where his father had been a doctor, she founded a gliding school. Young Erich spent his entire childhood in the wind, learning the profound silent language of the air. Gliding taught him everything. It taught him to understand the wind, the currents, and the subtle shift of gravity. It taught him the discipline of extreme efficiency, where every turn, every movement costs precious energy. He became a master of energy management long before he stepped into a fighter cockpit. He was trained to be a warrior, but he was inherently a pilot, a man who simply understood how to use the sky better than anyone else. His early training was smooth, but a slight mishap almost ended his career before it began. During a routine dive, he executed an unauthorized flamboyant acrobatic maneuver, a show of youthful arrogance. His punishment was severe: 1 week in the guardhouse. It was a vital lesson. Talent is nothing without discipline. He never forgot it. In October 1942, Hartmann was deployed to the Eastern Front, joining the legendary Jagdgeschwader 52, JG-52. He was assigned a Messerschmitt Bf 109 and paired with one of the most experienced aces on the front, Oberfeldwebel Edmund Paul Rossmann. His first combat mission was a disaster. During a patrol, Hartmann spotted an enemy aircraft, a Soviet Il-2 Sturmovik. Overcome with the excitement of his first encounter, he ignored Rossmann's clear instructions to wait and recklessly dove into the attack. He fired too soon, missed entirely, and then found himself directly in front of the heavily armed Soviet plane, which immediately opened fire. He was forced to take violent evasive action, narrowly avoiding being hit. Rossmann was furious. Back on the ground, the veteran ace did not scream. He simply analyzed the failure. Rossmann taught Hartmann the core lesson of the Eastern Front. You are not a hero, you are a hunter. His job was not to be brave, but to survive and destroy. This crucial period under Rossmann cemented the tactical method that would define Hartmann's career. See, decide, attack, break. It was a doctrine built on surprise, not dogfighting. Hartmann realized that traditional dogfighting, the intricate swirling aerial ballet seen in the West, was a fool's game on the Eastern Front. It wasted fuel, wasted ammunition, and gave the heavily armed Soviet pilots too much time to react. He developed a radical approach that hinged entirely on the element of surprise and extreme proximity. His method was simple and ruthless: strike from the blind spot. He would climb high, use the sun or clouds as cover, and descend in an invisible dive. He would get so close to the enemy aircraft, often within 50 to 100 meters, that he could not miss. His technique was not about marksmanship, it was about geometry. His famous quote summarizes it perfectly. I always waited until the whole canopy of the enemy aircraft filled my sight. Then I knew he couldn't shoot me. By firing at point-blank range, he ensured immediate destruction, often causing the enemy aircraft to explode, leaving no trace. This close-range lethality meant he often flew through the debris of his own targets, damaging his own plane, but never failing to get the kill. This tactic was devastatingly effective. It conserved fuel, conserved ammunition, and minimized the time he spent vulnerable to counterattack. The enemy never saw him coming. Hartmann's kill count began to climb with dizzying speed. By August 1943, he had reached 50 kills. The military recognized his unprecedented skill, and he was promoted and awarded the Knight's Cross. But his biggest achievement was a deep mutual bond of trust with his longtime wingman, Alfred Bielik Grzelowski. In the chaos of the Eastern Front, a wingman was everything. A good wingman guaranteed your survival. Hartmann and Grzelowski flew together with an almost telepathic coordination. It was this perfect synergy that made them untouchable. They operated as a single, lethal unit. As his fame grew, so did the myth. The Soviets were baffled. They couldn't understand how one man was causing so much destruction. They began to paint the nose of their aircraft red, an aggressive challenge to the German pilots. In response, the German command began to apply a distinct black tulip paint scheme to the nose of Hartmann's Messerschmitt Bf 109. This striking black nose was meant to be intimidating, but it had an unexpected effect. When Soviet pilots spotted the black tulip, they knew exactly who it was. They often broke off the attack and fled, refusing to engage the Black Devil. This avoidance, too, was a victory for Hartmann. He had achieved the ultimate air superiority, deterrence through reputation. By August 1944, Erich Hartmann's achievements had reached a point of almost disbelief. He wasn't just scoring kills, he was decimating entire Soviet squadrons. On August 24, 1944, Hartmann achieved his 301st aerial victory. No pilot from any nation had ever come close to this number. He was celebrated by the Reich, but his grounding was a source of pure frustration for the ace. He felt his duty was in the sky, not in the spotlight. The psychological impact of the Black Devil was profound. The Soviet Air Force became obsessed with eliminating him. They often offered a reward, a valuable ZIS-5 truck or a month OAS leave, to any Soviet pilot who could bring him down. The Soviets deliberately painted some of their older, less experienced fighters with bright red noses, hoping to draw Hartmann into a classic dogfight. The Soviet pilots learned, however, that the moment they spotted the black tulip of Hartmann's Messerschmitt, the only rational move was to immediately dive for the clouds. The attempts to catch him were relentless. On one occasion, a massive group of Soviet Yak-9 fighters tried a coordinated ambush, forcing him low to the ground. Hartmann used his mastery of speed and altitude, flying so close to the treetops that the trailing Soviet fighters crashed into the terrain trying to keep up. He escaped without a scratch. His survival was not luck. It was a perfect blend of skill, tactical discipline, and aggressive self-preservation. The final months of 1944 and early 1945 were the most desperate of the war. JG-52 was transferred to defend the collapsing fronts in Hungary, Czechoslovakia, and Austria. The aircraft fuel was low, the ammunition was scarce, and the Soviet air superiority was overwhelming. Hartmann realized his role had shifted. He was no longer just a hunter. He was a lifeline. He was tasked with covering the retreat of German ground troops and protecting inexperienced novice pilots. Despite the impossible odds, he flew with renewed ferocity. His final months of flying are a testament to his unbreakable spirit. On March 1, 1945, he achieved his 350th victory. The technical difficulties were constant. His aircraft was often held together by spare parts, maintenance crews worked miracles with almost no resources, and the fuel was of dangerously poor quality. He had to perform 14 separate forced landings due to mechanical failure or damage from the debris of his own targets. Every time he walked away, ready to fly again within hours. His final aerial victory, number 352, came on May 8, 1945. It was literally hours before Germany's unconditional surrender. He shot down a Soviet Yak-9 over Brno, Czechoslovakia. It was the last kill of the Eastern Front. The war was over. For Hartmann, however, a new, brutal war for survival was about to begin. On May 8, 1945, having received the order to surrender, Hartmann led his entire squadron down to a U.S. Army forward position. He refused to let his priceless Messerschmitt Bf 109s fall into Soviet hands, destroying them on the ground before surrendering to the Americans. Hartmann believed the war was finished and that his ordeal was over. He was wrong. Under the Yalta Agreement, all German troops who fought on the Eastern Front were to be handed over to the Soviet forces. Despite his strenuous protests and his belief that he had surrendered to the Americans, Hartmann and thousands of his comrades were delivered directly into Soviet custody. His journey began with brutal interrogations. The Soviets were not interested in peace. They were interested in revenge and technology. They demanded to know how he achieved 352 victories, often accusing him of cheating, exaggeration, or being a spy. They tried every psychological tactic to break him, from isolation to sleep deprivation. They demanded he teach the secrets of the Bf 109 and the tactics of the Luftwaffe. Hartmann, a man who believed in the soldier's code, refused every demand to cooperate. His refusal was met with immediate, unyielding punishment. Hartmann was labeled a war criminal, a decision rooted purely in political vengeance for his success. The Soviet Union sentenced him to 25 years of hard labor in the Gulag system. His 10 years in the Soviet prison camps in mines and construction zones were a brutal continuation of the war. He was forced to endure unimaginable hardship, starvation, extreme cold, illness, and constant psychological warfare.